5 spine-chilling tales revealed, the sinister secrets haunted by cursed grandparent stories. Lucy sat huddled with her family in their dimly lit living room, shadows dancing upon the walls as flickers of candlelight illuminated their grief. The air was thick, almost choking with the memories of Grandma Edna, who had filled their lives with delightful tales of talking trees and clever raccoons. But her passing was like a storm brewing on the horizon, dark and ominous, leaving Lucy uneasy. She sipped her cocoa, hoping to blend with the warmth but feeling the chill of something sinister lurking just beyond the windows. "Let us share her stories," Mark suggested, summoning a smile that felt foreign. "She'd want us to remember the joy," he faltered, glancing at Lucy, whose eyes were wide, searching for comfort. With each story they spun, though, a creeping dread curled in Lucy's gut. The comfort of their tales shifted subtly, like the air before a thunderstorm. As Mark began recounting Grandma Edna's favorite, Lucy felt a shiver slide down her spine. "Once," he spoke, "there was a clever raccoon who tricked a bird into providing him food, but beware, every trickster has their downfall." The shadows outside seemed to pulse, whispers echoed faintly through the glass, and Lucy could almost hear them calling her name, teasingly soft and swirling in the night air. "Are you all right, Luce? You look like you've seen a ghost," Jake dismissed lightly, chuckling, as if her distress was nothing more than part of childhood mischief. But they didn't understand, didn't see the shadows thickening around their home, didn't sense that they were provoking something with every word they recited. Lucy decided to search for the family's old storybook, a supposed treasure trove of Edna's creativity. Instead, she found a dusty leather-bound journal hiding beneath Grandma's chair, a forbidden tome. The moment she opened it, icy dread swept over her. The pages writhed with dark accounts tied to her family's lineage, horrific tales of vengeful spirits and creatures lurking in the woods, preying on unsuspecting children. The ink seemed alive, pulsating like a heartbeat, as she turned the pages, sweat forming a cold veil on her brow, and then she saw it, through the window. Just beyond the yard, a dusky figure stood motionless, its blank face hidden in darkness, eyes glimmering unnaturally. A shock of fear gripped her heart. This wasn't just a story anymore. "This is real," she thought frantically, feeling the heavy air close in around her chest. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As her family kept sharing, Lucy's anxiety spiraled. With each tale, the air felt pregnant with hidden darkness, binding them to something far more sinister. The figure was still there, waiting patiently for her. She needed to escape, to warn them before it was too late. Steeling her resolve, Lucy slipped outside into the night, every step feeling like a descent into a nightmare. The ground felt colder beneath her feet, and the wind howled, almost urging her forward. She reached the edge of the yard where the figure had been stationed, but it was gone, leaving behind a lingering dread that filled her senses. But then, the rustle of leaves caught her attention. Terror shot through her as she recalled Grandma Edna's warnings. "Not all who depart this world leave behind peace," it seemed to whisper. The chilling words echoed in her mind as shadows closed in. She took a shaky breath, adrenaline surging, realizing she was not just facing tales but a looming malevolence. There was something waiting, a truth buried deep within the folklore, and as she turned to run, all she could hear were the lingering whispers, "They are waiting for you." Lucy bolted back towards the house, breathless, terror coursing through her veins. The shadows seemed to stretch, chasing after her, eager to consume her in their dark embrace. She could feel the icy fingers of fear wrap around her, squeezing her heart tighter with each step. Somehow, she had awoken something that should have remained silent, slumbering in the tales of her grandmother. She reached the porch, the wooden boards creaking protest as she stumbled over them. The door felt impossibly heavy, but she slammed it shut behind her as the terrified pounding of her heart matched the rhythm of the storm brewing outside. The flickering candles cast long shadows on the walls, and she felt as if they were mocking her with their dancing light, refusing to illuminate the darkness swelling inside the house. "Lucy! What happened?" Mark rushed to her side, his forehead creased with worry. She could hardly articulate a word, not with the shadows of those ancient stories clawing at her thoughts, begging to be released, pleading to be believed. Instead, she grabbed the leather-bound journal, her fingers trembling as she thrust it into their faces. "Look! It's real. The stories, there's something out there." Her voice was thin, like threads of a spider's web unraveling. The room fell still, the weight of her panic sinking in, a heavy, suffocating presence that wrapped around them. "Just a journal, Luce. You're overreacting." Jake scoffed, his bravado wavering as he glanced nervously at the window. "Right?" But the question hung in the air, a silent plea for reassurance. The glint of despair in Lucy's eyes told them all she couldn't produce. Then, out of the darkness, a sharp knock echoed through the silence, startling them all. It resonated like a death knell, chilling them to the bone. Mark's face paled, glancing at the door, then back at Lucy. "Did you hear that?" "Yes. I told you. She told us to be careful." Lucy shouted, her voice rising, choking with unfounded dread as she flipped through the journal's pages, searching for answers, understanding amid the chaos swirling in her mind. The wind howled outside, screeching and wailing, and the knocking grew louder, more insistent. Each rap against the door felt deliberate, demanding, as if whatever was outside wanted entry, wanted them to listen, to pull them into the tales they thought were just stories. "Maybe it's just the wind," Mark said, but uncertainty crept into his words. Lucy shook her head, a welling fear blooming in her chest. "No. Remember the stories. What if it's one of those spirits?" The shifting shadows in their home felt like they were listening, searching for a way in. The whispers grew louder, filling the corners of her mind, dark echoes mingling with the beating of her heart. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunged them into darkness for a heartbeat before the candles resumed their erratic dance. And when they did, the figure was there again, now manifesting behind the glass. A silhouette, rigid, almost human, but not quite. Empty eyes glowed like coals, burning a hole through the veil of night. "Stay back!" Jake yelled, instinctively moving to protect Lucy, though she felt she was the one who should protect him. Her stomach twisted in fear, her family too close to the precipice of whatever horror this was. No voice could call them back as the reality of their fate swirled closer. The figure shifted, fingers outstretched towards the glass, drawing nearer, as Lucy realized with icy certainty it was waiting not just for her, it was waiting for all of them. As the wind picked up, a voice howled through the crack of the door, chilling her to the bone. "You asked for her stories, now you'll see." The finality of the moment condensed the air around them, offering no comfort, only the dread of anticipation, and then the candles snuffed out completely, leaving them in the dark and feeling very, very alone. What awaited them beyond the veil of night and the whispers of old stories? The truth lurked, crawling out from the depths of family lore, and it was hungry. Lucy felt the darkness wrap around her, a suffocating shroud that made every breath a struggle. The air turned thick, choking a weight that pressed down on her chest. Jake's face was a pale blur next to her, and she could hear Mark's cautious breaths beside them, both of them waiting for her to break the silence that felt almost sacred in its tension. "What now?" Mark whispered, voice barely audible, straining against the silence. The pounding on the door continued, methodical and unyielding. Lucy's pulse quickened, every beat flooding her with a fresh wave of adrenaline. It was as if the figure outside was beckoning her, taunting her with promises of forbidden truths. She wanted to scream, to run, but her feet felt glued to the floor, terror rooting her in place. Stumbling further into the darkness, she reached for the journal again, hands trembling like leaves in a storm. "There's got to be something here," she mumbled, half to herself, half to the others who stood close, as if clinging to her words could somehow shield them from the horrors outside. With a flick of the candle's flame, the flicker of her memory danced back to the tales her grandmother told her. Stories of revenge, of cursed spirits who demanded sacrifices, of darkness that preyed on fear. The thought sent a fresh shiver down her spine. "Lucy, what do we do?" Jake's voice trembled, breaking her from her reverie. "We can't just stand here." "I know," she snapped, her voice fierce with a sudden burst of panic. "But we can't let it in. The journal, it talks about how to protect ourselves." Mark's eyes widened as he glanced between them. "What if it's too late?" The shriek of the wind cut through the house as if the storm outside was alive, seeking to enter through any crack or crevice. Shadows twisted and turned, mocking their feeble attempt at courage. Lucy grasped the journal tighter, feeling the worn leather cool against her palm. If there was even a glimmer of hope hidden in those pages, she had to find it. "Listen," Lucy whispered, almost inaudibly. "If we're going to face whatever's out there, then we need to do it together. The stories, maybe they have power. Maybe we can use them against it." A flicker of resolve glimmered in Jake's eyes, but Mark shook his head, doubt clouding his features. "What if it's stronger than we think? What if the stories don't stop?" Lucy yelled, cutting him off. Fear was already pooling in her stomach like ice. "We won't survive if we let it take our hope." Taking a deep breath, she opened the journal to the section she remembered most vividly, her fingers flying over the brittle pages. The candlelight danced sporadically, casting eerie shapes against the walls like shadows of old ghosts. "The binding ritual here," she exclaimed, reading hurriedly through the words. "We can trap it back at least for a little while." "All right," Jake said, determination filling his voice. "What do we need to do?" We need salt." "This should create a perimeter," Lucy replied, scanning the instructions frantically. "And a photo of the one it wants." "What? It wants a photo? Of what?" Mark asked, voice rising, panic seeping back in. "Of Grandma. She can pull it back. Lucy glanced back at the door as if she could feel the cold eyes still staring in from the outside. "We just have to hold on until we can." The next knock landed with a finality unlike any before, shattering her focus for a moment. It was as if the air itself screamed along with the wind. Then sudden silence fell around them. The figure outside ceased, as if waiting, as if aware of their desperate plan. The shadows faded to a whisper, leaving a pregnant pause that echoed with a dreadful anticipation. Lucy clenched the journal against her chest, fear gnawing at her gut. "Lucy." Mark's voice trembled, "What if it knows what we're trying to do?" Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and for a moment, they all stood suspended in time as the figure surged forward, dark fingers pressing against the glass once more. A low growl emerged through the cracks, the voice melding into the wind, hissing sinister promises. That paralyzed them all. This was no longer just a story. It was a nightmare unfolding, and the next pages of their lives hinged on the choice they made now. Lucy's heart raced. Could they really win if they played by the rules of life and death? Or was the price of knowing too steep? "What if we fail?" she whispered, the specter of doubt creeping back in, but as they each clutched at lingering hope, the true terror lay ahead, the choice to confront the darkness together or to succumb to the shadows that clawed hungrily at their doors, and outside, beyond the barriers they desperately tried to maintain, the waiting hunger of the night grew, and it was only just beginning. The air shifted around them, heavy with anticipation and prickling dread. Lucy's fingers skimmed over the page of the journal, the ink blurring slightly in the flickering light. She could barely focus, her heart thundering in her chest, the sound echoing like a war drum. They needed to act fast. Shadows twisted unnaturally on the walls, merging into one another as if their very forms were alive, hungry for the warmth of hope dwindling inside the room. Jake and Mark stood close, the tension between them palpable, and Lucy could feel the weight of their uncertainty pressing against her. Okay, we need to get the salt. And the photo. Where is it? Lucy's voice was a soft tremor, almost lost among the worsening winds that howled outside. I saw it earlier, in the living room, Jake said, voice shaky but firm. I'll get it. No. No one goes alone. Lucy shot back, panic exploding in her chest as if the fear was a burst dam. We need to stick together. The thudding at the door resumed, louder and more insistent, drowning out her voice. Each knock felt like a threat, a promise of impending doom. Mark swallowed hard, eyes darting to the door and back to Lucy, desperation etched across his face. Let us just stick to the plan. We can't let this thing in, he finally said, although his voice trembled with doubt. Lucy nodded, forcing herself to breathe. We summon her, maybe she'll know what to do. She closed the journal, thumbing the edge as if steadying herself against the horror outside. Let us go then, Jake said, determination in his gaze. They formed a tight cluster, hearts racing like a synchronized drumbeat as they advanced cautiously toward the living room, moving like a shadow through the terrifying silence that seemed to mock them. As they entered the room, dim light flickered off the walls like an unseen force was watching, waiting. A chill seeped into Lucy's bones. She glanced toward the family photo hung over the mantel, a frozen moment frozen in time. But no, her grandmother needed to be in the picture, not just a memory. My bag, you can find a picture of her in there. Lucy gestured toward the nook in the corner where her belongings lay scattered from their earlier escape. Mark hesitated, but the knock at the door echoed like a thunderclap, jolting them all. Okay, I'll grab it, he said, turning on his heels. The moment Mark stepped away, a wave of cold air rushed through the room, swirling like a thick fog. Lucy's skin prickled. Jake, can you find the salt? On it. He said, darting to the kitchen, the floor creaking underfoot. Lucy watched Mark navigate the clutter in the corner, anxiety spilling over her as the relentless knocking continued. It echoed in her mind, a countdown to something dreadful, driving her toward panic. Hurry. We don't have much time. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and the candles flickered eerily. Mark froze with his hands in her bag, eyes wide. Something's wrong. I can feel it. The door vibrated, a guttural growl seeping through the cracks and twisting the air around them. Lucy! Jake shouted from the kitchen, voice strained with urgency. I can't find the salt. Forget about but her words died in her throat as darkness spilled in around them like a living creature, creeping closer, drowning the light. Lucy! Mark cried, dropping the bag and stumbling backward as the shadows reached for him, curling around his ankles like greedy tendrils. Get down! Lucy screamed, pushing him away just as a chilling wail pierced the night from beyond the door. In that instant of chaos, a sense of hopelessness threatened to crush them beneath its weight. They had come too far to turn back, yet the darkness seemed to claw at their very souls, promising despair and desolation. As she frantically scanned her area, Lucy caught sight of the journal again, lying on the table, its spine cracked. We have to use it. She yelled, her voice rising above the chaos enveloping them. But as the shadows loomed larger, threatening to swallow them whole, she realized they might not have the chance. A frigid wind tore through the room. And the door buckled under unseen pressure, splintering wood, sending pieces flying. The growl rose, echoing through the room, and she felt the very foundation beneath them tremble. But one single thought pressed against her mind: what if they were never meant to escape at all? The realization cut through her. A truth so horrifying it threatened to fracture her very being. And then, as the darkness closed in, Jake stumbled back into the room, wild-eyed. I found the salt. But it was too late. With that fractured scream hanging in the air, all hope teetered on a razor's edge. Would they be able to bind the darkness that had come for them? Or had they sealed their own fate in the shadows that cackled just out of sight? In the pitch silence that followed, a haunting truth emerged: the real horror was just beginning. Mark's scream echoed in Lucy's ears, but it was drowned out by the rising cacophony of despair. The shadows, relentless and alive, surged toward them, curling into grotesque shapes that danced with hunger. She couldn't think. All reason evaporated under the weight of terror closing in. "Stand back!" Jake shouted, shaking the salt with trembling hands like it was a weapon. He poured a line before them, the white granules delicate against the hardwood floor. But as they watched the salt hit the ground, something shifted. An anguished hiss, sharp and cutting, erupted from the funnel of darkness. The shadows recoiled, hissing as if burnt by the purity of the salt, but it was only a brief reprieve. "Is it working?" Mark's voice wavered, glancing between Lucy and Jake, eyes wide, body poised to run. "Not enough." Lucy yelled, desperation painting every syllable. "We need the photo. We have to summon her." Mark, breathing heavily, scrambled to reach her bag again. The shadows writhed, sensing the movement and lunged, stretching for him with tendrils of darkness, grasping like skeletal fingers. "No! Mark!" Lucy extended a hand, paralyzed by fear yet driven to protect him. He yanked his hand back just in time, the shadows snapping at the air where he'd been. "I'm trying!" he shouted, frantic, rummaging through the clutter. The shadows howled, deafening, retreating momentarily only to surge forward again, fiercer, hungrier. "Here!" he shouted suddenly, gripping the photo of her grandmother tightly. "I found it." "Now what?" "Hold it steady," Jake instructed, pouring more salt in an attempt to fortify their makeshift barrier. The air thickened, charged with a tension that felt desperate and consuming. Lucy could feel the walls stretching tighter, closing in as if reality itself warped under the pressure of their opposing forces. The photo shimmered in the dim light, reflecting off the shadows. "We need to call to her. Now!" Lucy cried, her heart racing. Mark held the picture out, Lillian Zapata, grandmother. "We need you." Every shout felt like a final plea as desperation wrapped around them like a noose. The shadows smoldered, recoiling as if uncertain. For a heartbeat, the room fell into a suffocating stillness. And then, from within the oppressive dark, a voice emerged. It was low, almost a whisper, threading through the chaos, a melody wrapped in sorrow. "Release me," it coaxed, the shadows swirling as if stirred by a breeze. Panic squeezed Lucy's throat. "No! We can't." But before she could finish, an icy blast gripped her. The shadows shivered, shrinking back, and then suddenly expanded, morphed into a figure, a woman cloaked in swirling darkness but with familiar features hiding beneath the veil. Lucy's breath caught in her throat as she recognized her grandmother, her voice echoing like a forgotten hymn. "Lillian," Lucy murmured, hopeful yet terrified. "Join me." Lillian spoke, her voice intoxicating, reverberating in the walls. "Together, we can be free." "Free?" Mark stepped back, eyes darting. "What does that mean?" "I can take you with me," her grandmother coaxed, a bittersweet offering lingering in the air. "No more fear. No more pain." "No!" Lucy cried out, realizing the heaviness in the air, the weight of temptation. "You're not her. Fight it." She gripped the journal tightly, pouring through its pages even as tendrils of shadow coiled around her feet, threatening to pull her down. "Help us!" Jake shouted, raising the salt high. "Get away from her." The shadows writhed, arrested momentarily by the salt, but desperation hung in the air like a specter, echoing the ancestral pull. The haunting words flickered through Lucy's mind, her grandmother's voice weaving through confusion and dread. What if she's lying?" Mark whispered, barely audible, his eyes reflecting the shimmering darkness. The figure of Lillian stretched her hand forward, beckoning with a beauty that felt wrong. "You can have everything you desire, but only if you give yourself willingly." An anguished silence held them captive. The shadows whispered promises of escape, but around them, darkness threatened to consume every ounce of light. As Mark and Jake exchanged looks marred with uncertainty, Lucy gripped the photo tighter. The tangible fear swirled, inviting doubts that blinded her. She couldn't let them believe. But could she hold on to the truth, or were they all destined to fall? What if we're already trapped? She thought, the shadows whispering dark truths in their ears, growing closer, longing to envelop them as Lucy faced what lay ahead. The room trembled again, the very air thickening as the darkness surged forth, and in that terrifying moment, she realized. What if the only way to fight the darkness was to confront the horrific truth of their own hearts? And as Lillian's form shimmered in twisted beauty, a chilling question echoed: how far were they willing to go to escape their fate? The shadows quivered, hungry for their decision, and Lucy felt her skin crawl with a strange mix of dread and longing. Her grandmother's voice was melodic but wrapped in a web of deceit. Lillian smiled, an expression that was once warm but now twisted in something coaxing, sinister. "Think of all you could have, Lucy," the spectre urged, her voice silky smooth. "A world without pain, where dreams blend with reality, where family isn't lost." Each word was like a fog, swirling in Lucy's mind, tempting her further into despair. Mark's eyes flickered with fear, but beneath it, a hint of desire sparked. What if we could really be free?" he murmured, glancing at the shadowy figure. "No. Mark, fight it." Lucy's voice cracked under the pressure. She shook her head, desperate to shatter the trance. The salt barrier began to fizzle, the line blurring as the shadows grew bolder. Maybe it was her imagination, but she swore she felt a chill wrapping around her heart, squeezing tighter. "I can bring balance," Lillian continued, moving closer, her features flickering like a dying flame. "You can stay together, forever." Her hand stretched out, the fingers beckoning seductively. The shadows twisted, forming an ominous silhouette. Lucy remembered late nights filled with her grandmother's stories of sacrifice, of people driven mad by offers of eternal bliss laced with despair. What about the past? What about the pain? Lucy shouted, voice breaking through the oppressive darkness. "What price would we pay?" The room turned dark and heavy, filled with low breaths and the scent of earth. Jake stood, paralyzed, unable to anchor himself between the demand of the shadows and the truth that anchored them in reality. The air thickened as the figure of Lillian began to shimmer. "Pain is a choice," she replied, her tone darkening. "I am what you need. I can save you." Time lost all meaning, seconds stretched like eternity. The shadows crept closer, whispering promises of salvation, a way out from this hell they had stumbled into. Lucy felt the pull deepening, a sickening allure that wrapped around her mind like a vice. "No!" she screamed, scrambling back. "We're not doing this." The sudden movement broke the spell over Mark. He took a step back, shaking his head. "We can't trust her, Lucy. We can't." The fight etched across his face mirrored Jake's resolve, both of them casting glances at the ever-encroaching darkness. With renewed determination, Lucy raised the photo high. "Lillian Zapata, we call on your strength." The words erupted from her like fire, cutting through the dim atmosphere, defiance ringing clear. Behind her, the boys moved, stepping forward as one. The shadows recoiled for a moment, a hiss escaping an ungodly noise that shattered the tension like glass. In that instant, the air tasted different, electric, alive with desperation. "Fight back!" Jake shouted, scattering salt deeper into the room. Its crystalline structure glimmered, trapping glimpses of faint light, reflecting their resolve. Lillian's features hardened, the twisted beauty replaced by a storm of rage. "You think you can resist me?" The shadows unleashed a horrific roar, a sound that dripped with malice and despair. "Keep calling her," Mark urged, fear igniting their fight. "We can do this." Lucy felt the rush of adrenaline. "Lillian, we seek your true self." A chill gripped her breath as the shadows roared around them, visibly enraged. "Help us." With every ounce of hope, she pleaded, calling the essence of her grandmother. The very air shifted, whispering secrets of strength and sorrow, threatening to extinguish the last flicker of their light. But darkness was patient. It seeped into every crack, coiling and testing their resolve. Lucy could feel it pressing around her, threatening to drown any light they summoned. In a flash, Lillian lunged, tendrils of shadow crashing down toward them like a dark wave threatening to swallow the room whole. "Don't look away," Jake warned as Lucy's heart pounded. She could feel the weight of history crushing her. Could they truly defy this abyss? And as the darkness surged, insatiable in its hunger, a thought flashed in her mind. What if Lillian wasn't just seeking freedom for herself but a darker power entirely? With the shadows looming ever closer, Lucy braced herself for impact, preparing for the terrifying truth that might either save them or seal their fate. What if the real horror wasn't just in the shadows, but in what they would become if they accepted the darkness? The shadows erupted with fury, tendrils of darkness reaching like clawed hands, eager to grasp hold of their prey. In a split-second rush, Lucy could see Lillian's serene face twisted in an expression of pure wrath, her ghostly form rippling. Instinct took over. She dove sideways, narrowly escaping the strike as the heavy weight of shadows smashed into the ground where she had been standing. "Keep moving," Jake yelled, urgency snapping through his voice. He dashed left, leading Mark toward the door, but the shadows were everywhere, coiling and slithering, blocking their path. The oppressive aroma of damp earth filled Lucy's nostrils, mingling with something metallic, like blood, that made her stomach twist. "Lucy, this way." Mark grabbed her wrist, pulling her with him toward the far side of the room. The salt barrier was fizzing out, crumbling like old parchment under the weight of the dark surge. They were running out of time. Lucy could see the essence of her grandmother shifting in the gloom, her features oscillating between maternal softness and vengeful monster. "You think you can turn your back on me?" Lillian's voice rose above the din, sharp and insistent. "I can offer you everything you desire." A scream bubbled in Lucy's throat, raw and instinctive. "All you desire is a nightmare," she gasped, tugging against Mark's grip. "We need her true spirit. Think, what would she want? Would she bring this hell upon us?" The very walls seemed to pulse as the spectre's rage grew. Shadows swarmed, blurring the dim light until they twisted into shapes, the silhouettes of people, lost souls trapped in Lillian's embrace. She felt their despair weigh heavily on her, as if the price of their freedom would be paid with blood and sorrow. "Get the photo," Jake shouted, catching sight of it still in Lucy's hand. She didn't hesitate, she thrust the picture forward as if it were a shield. "Lillian, remember who you were," Lucy cried out as she held the photo high. "Remember the love. Not this darkness." The shadows hissed, retreating just a fraction, their anger turning inward, feeding on themselves. Lillian's face faltered, her rage momentarily dimmed by a flicker of anguish. "You are foolish to invoke such memories," she hissed, but Lucy could see the weakness, the chinks in the dark armor pulling back. "Then show us who you really are." Mark's voice trembled with both fear and defiance, and at that moment, it felt like they were not just battling against darkness but against an entire legacy willing to consume them. The air crackled, alive with tension. Lucy's heart raced, and a growing warmth spread from the photo, a ghost of hope igniting in the frigid space. "Please," she continued, eyes locked on her grandmother's flickering figure. "Let us see the light." A clash erupted. Lillian's form was torn between shadows and light, swirling like an angry storm. Lucy felt the energy shift, the shadows recoiling before their chant, sensing their united resolve. Then a scream rang out, a sound that pierced through the chaos, an otherworldly wail of torment that reverberated against the walls, shaking them to their core. The floor trembled, cracks spiderwebbing outward like the sanity they were fighting for. "Fight it, Lillian!" Jake yelled, his voice rising above the thrashing storm of shadows. But the darkness fought back, a desperate battle of wills flashing around them. Light flickered, casting brief silhouettes of the spirits captured, faces of anguish twisted in eternal torment, crying out without voices. Lucy felt their despair wrapping around her, entangled with her own urgency. What price would they have to pay? And was this fight even worth it if Lillian's choice was still draped in shadow? As the chaos broke, Lucy caught a glimpse of something, a flash of silver, a flicker of truth hidden somewhere within the dark. Shadows twisted, morphing into grotesque figures that seemed to laugh at their struggles. Then the shadows stilled. Silence fell suddenly, thick and stifling. Lucy held her breath, her heart slamming against her rib cage. What lay ahead? Had they found the way forward, or were they merely inches from the edge of oblivion? The question echoed through the hollow chamber, tangled in the miasma of confusion and fear. What if Lillian leaned toward darkness again? Would they end up being the very horrors they sought to resist? Before they could make sense of the chilling silence, a voice broke through, delicate and haunting. You have failed me. And at that moment, Lucy knew, they were far from done. The silence was more than a void, it was a predator, lurking, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Lucy's heart thudded in her chest, a rapid tattoo against the dread lingering in the air. Shadows were gathering again, but this time it felt different. They no longer surged, they coiled, anticipating, preparing for a calculated attack. Did you hear that? Mark whispered, his voice trembling. He peered into the darkness, eyes wide with terror, as if expecting it to rip apart at any moment. Jake nodded, his jaw clenched. Yeah, we did. We need to keep going, now. But how could they move forward when they were paralyzed by fear? The air grew heavy, thick with despair, wrapping around them like smothering fog. A flicker of movement caught Lucy's eye. Just a flash, but it felt far more sinister than the chaos before. Lucy Mark's voice was barely audible. What if it's coming for us? I don't know, she stammered. The truth was suffocating. The shadows were not just remnants of her grandmother, they were manifested fears, all the darkness that lurked within their souls. The impulse to flee clawed at her, a desire to escape this nightmarish realm. As if responding to her thoughts, shadows lunged forward, snapping with a chilling sound, like bones cracking under pressure. Lucy stumbled backward, desperately searching for a way out. Keep it together. Jake shouted. He pushed against the darkness as they moved further into the room, but each step felt like wading through water. The shadows crept closer, desperate to consume any light they found. Lucy reached for the photo again, hoping its power could break through the suffocating weight of terror. She could feel anger bubbling up, not just at Lillian but at the haunting tension that swallowed them whole. What do you want from us? She cried, voice breaking, hands trembling. The shadows convulsed, forming grotesque shapes, their dark mouths twisting into cruel grins. Your souls to feed the hunger, a chorus of voices echoed, thick with malice. Lillian's presence flickered at the center, her features growing sharp and twisted, drawing Lucy's gaze in. No. You are more than this. We know you're here. Lucy shouted, determination pushing through her panic. Lillian froze, caught between anger and the faintest glimmer of recognition. You think you can save me? She hissed, her ghostly face battling with the fading spark of warmth in her eyes. Your precious love. It's meaningless now. Overwhelmed, Lucy pressed against Mark and Jake. They were teetering on the brink, their voices urging her on. We have to believe, Mark whispered, his eyes scanning the darkness. Whatever it takes, we can't let her go. White-hot resolve ignited within Lucy, sparking against the suffocating air. Lillian, remember the good times. Please. The shadow shrieked, a torrent of agony ripping through the room. For a moment, Lucy thought she saw the flicker of something else beneath Lillian's wrath, a fragment of the loving woman buried beneath layers of pain and resentment, but then fangs emerged from the dark, sharper than before, lashing out in rage. It was as if the darkness was fighting for Lillian's attention, viciously pulling her further into the abyss. No! Lucy cried out, desperate. But a thick tendril wrapped around her leg, pulling her toward the gloom. The walls trembled, and Lucy fought, every muscle tensing as she grasped for anything solid. Jake and Mark were at her sides, yelling, their voices mingling into a cacophony of panic. The air blared with chaos. Lillian's voice rose and fell, turbulence scorching the once familiar tone. "You'll not take her from me." Lucy felt a snap, a fracture of reality, echoing the breaking of her heart. "Lillian, don't do this." The pulse of dread consumed her. Would they break like the spirits trapped around them? Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, throwing Lucy back, a jolt of energy surging through her. And then, just as soon as hope flickered, shadows spun, revealing a new darkness, deeper and more ferocious. A cold sensation creeping in, Lucy realized they weren't alone anymore. Something darker was coming, a force of unimaginable terror, ready to flood in and claim them all. "Get back!" Mark yelled, eyes wild as the darkness shifted again, and a terrible shape loomed just beyond the edge of vision. The fight wasn't over. What awaited them was worse than fear. What lurked just beyond the veil? Lucy felt the cold grip of terror tighten around her throat as she was hurled back by the shadows. The air crackled with a looming presence, a palpable force, but what it was remained shrouded in a deep, suffocating darkness. "Can't breathe, can't," she gasped, her heart hammering so loudly that she feared it might explode. Mark and Jake felt it too. Their eyes darted around, catching glimpses of shapes that seemed to writhe and pulse with malicious intent. "What is it?" Mark shouted, his voice cracking as panic overrode reason. "I don't know." Jake screamed back, his fists clenched, desperation evident in his expression. The shadows swirled, now a sinister cyclone of cold energy, pushing the trio back, each step toward the vague outline of something monstrous seeming to sap their strength. The walls around them groaned, and they felt the structure itself stir, as if the very house was awakening to defend its terrors, or perhaps to embrace them. "We need to find the exit," Lucy shouted, trying to fight through the swirling dread that threatened to drag them into a more profound abyss. But the shadows were relentless, and she felt lost, disoriented, as if she was surrounded by a malevolent fog that pressed against her from all sides. Suddenly, the shadows parted just enough for her to see a gleam of familiar glint reflecting back at her from the depths. It was the photo. Hope surged within her, a flicker barely surviving amidst the chaos. "The photo!" she cried out, desperately reaching back. "No! It's too late." Mark's eyes widened in horror. His voice trembled with urgency. "We can't." The shadows roared, echoing their disapproval. Tendrils lunged for her, snapping at her like a pack of hungry wolves. Lucy's blood ran cold. She couldn't lose the photo, it was the only tether to Lillian's humanity. "Stop!" she yelled, anger igniting her fear. "We're here to help you, Lillian." Her voice carried across the chaotic room like a bold challenge. "Help!" Lillian's voice shot back, layered with rage and sorrow. "You foolish mortals! You cannot change destiny." As the darkness struggled to restrain her, the air flickered, and for a fragile second, Lucy felt Lillian's warmth again, the touch of love buried beneath pain and wrath. "No! We want to let you go!" Jake cried out, stepping forward defiantly, determination etched into every feature as he shielded Lucy. In an instant, the shadows recoiled, fighting against Lillian's will. "You think love can withstand this?" she screeched, but doubt seemed to bleed through her monstrous facade. The shadows trembled, a moment of hesitation rippling through the void. Lucy could see it, the flicker of a choice hanging in the air. It was all or nothing. "I believe in you, in us," Lucy shouted, clasping the photo, feeling its power surge through her, bolstered by her friend's conviction. With her voice raised, echoing through the oppressive darkness, Lucy let the photo illuminate the shadows. It exploded into light, pushing back the dark, revealing flashes of memory, moments of joy, laughter, love. Images of Lillian dancing, smiling. But with the light came a deafening scream, as the shadows wriggled in agony, fighting to drown out the warmth, desperate to cling to their prey. Lucy felt the pressure building around her, a vacuum that promised to consume them all. "What's happening?" Mark shouted, eyes wide, as he struggled against the seething darkness. "It's trying to pull her back," Jake yelled, panic surging through his voice. "Lillian, fight it!" Lucy screamed, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the feverish sweat of fear. But then, a deeper chill descended upon them. Lucy felt a weight, a finality, pressing down like a grave stone. Deep in the shifting shadows, a new darkness writhed, monstrous tendrils reaching for them, charged with an unnatural hunger. "Accept your fate." A voice like thunder boomed from the black, so heavy it almost knocked her breath away. The shadows surged forward again, stronger, more insatiable than before. "Get away!" Mark shouted as he shoved Lucy back, the force of the darkness intensifying. Threatening to crush everything in its path. Was it too late? In that moment, they realized that darkness was only a harbinger of something even more terrifying lurking behind it. "Lucy!" Jake's scream sliced through the chaos as he was seized by the shadows. The last thing she saw was Mark's desperate face shrouded in gloom, tilting toward an even greater horror as an abyss stretched open. There was no time to think. She had to act. Together. Lucy cried, rallying every ounce of courage she had. "We fight." But would it be enough against what was coming? What if the true nightmare was yet to reveal itself? Lucy sank to her knees, the weight of despair so heavy it felt like a physical shackle. Shadows writhed around her, furiously hungry and relentless. She could feel the cold breath of something ancient, something alive and dark drawing closer. Mark floundered in the dark, trying to reach out to her, but each time he stepped forward, the shadows bared their teeth, snapping, seething. "Stay back!" Jake yelled, his voice breaking through the crushing dread. He backed towards Lucy, trying to shield her with his body. "We can do this. We have each other." The words felt flimsy against the chaos swirling and rumbling like a storm. Lucy's heart thundered in her chest, a desperate urge to fight bubbling fiercely within her. "You can't take us!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the fog of despair. Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision, but she forced herself to focus on the warmth that sometimes peeked through the shadows, those memories of her grandmother that felt like beacons of hope. "Lillian!" she cried, gripping the photo tightly. "You're not just shadows, you are love and laughter. You have to remember." She pulled out the journal, pages trembling in her hands as the shadows writhed hungrily. "Focus," Jake added, pouring salt around them in frantic movements, creating a line of protection. Together, they felt the collective pulse of their fear, grounding them. Each glyph, each word uttered from the journal rekindled a flicker of warmth within the garment of darkness. Moments of joy, Lucy shouted over the chaos, "Remember us as we remember you." The shadows shrieked, recoiling for just a beat. A moment of doubt rippled through their dark forms. "Join me." Lillian's voice bled through, a melody darkened with sorrow and rage, reaching for a connection buried beneath layers of anguish. "Escape this feeble existence." "No!" Mark bellowed, rage snapping like a snapped wire. "You're not offering freedom. You're offering torment." As if struck by his fiery conviction, the shadows hissed, imprisonment lined with despair echoing through their depths. Lucy felt the walls shiver around them, a soft whisper tracing the history meant to remain hidden. "We will not be your prison," she screamed, heart racing. "Lillian! Look!" She held the photo of better days high, where laughter echoed in their home, where the light once filled their hearts. Suddenly, warmth flooded back. Just for a flicker, a glimpse of familiar laughter danced through the darkness. Lucy seized it, holding it close. "Fight! We are your family. We love you." And for a heartbeat, darkness withdrew, revealing shadows that flickered uncertainly. Lucy threw every ounce of belief she had into that moment. "Remember the stories. She begged. Our love is stronger than this. We can break this curse together. Then came a deafening roar, a force more sinister than everything surrounding them. The darkness surged, anger pouring forth, and in that moment, Lillian's South figure danced dangerously close, flickering like a flame about to extinguish. The shadows surged, frenzy igniting the space as Lucy's desperation peaked. Lillian, we ask you to come back. A yearning echoed in her words. With the intensity of their combined determination, shadows faltered, sweeping away just enough for Lucy to step forward. She reached her trembling hand toward Lillian, who wavered in the shadows. The residual warmth of love, of family, shone in Lucy's heart, pushing back against abject terror. I won't lose you. Lucy cried. A trembling hand shot forward, and for a fleeting moment, the room filled with a golden light, illuminating the walls with a warmth that flooded them. No! The darkness howled, losing its grip, chaotic and enraged, tearing through memories, desperate to weave doubt into their minds, but the connection had been made. A bond stronger than fear, forged from shared moments and unyielding love, pierced the shadows. Lillian, remember the light. Lucy's voice broke through with conviction. The shadows shrieked again, writhing and twisting. A surge erupted as if the entire room shook. Mark and Jake stood resolute. Beside her, arms locked, candlelight breathing hope, fighting against despair as they stared the darkness in the face. Stay with us, Lillian. They shouted in unison. The tension coiled tightly, wrapping around them like an anvil, but the shadows began to splinter. The shimmering figure shuddered, as tendrils slowly drew back, unwrapping the figure in glowing light. Please, Lillian murmured, her form a flickering wisp, teetering between light and dark. I remember. Tendrils of darkness fell away, revealing scattered remnants of spirit, and then, with one final burst of light, they felt it, the warm and genuine embrace of their beloved grandmother. With that, the shadows screamed in disdain and fury, their darkness dissipating into the ether, howling as they were consumed by light. Everything is all right now, Lillian whispered, and the warmth enveloped them. It felt like a hug from the inside out. That connection was made. Lucy, Mark, and Jake huddled tightly, heartbeats finally steadied amidst the echoing winds of release. The heavy burden of the night began to lift, shadows evaporating into nothingness as the room softened back into the familiar warmth they fleetingly lost. Let us not forget, Lucy spoke softly, glancing at the embers of memory shining through. We owe it to the stories to keep our family's heart alive. And as the night settled into a gentle embrace, they nodded, knowing the tales they carried would forever keep their bond woven through laughter, a legend reborn from darkness into light. Now that you've reached the end of this spine-chilling tale, you need to show your support. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now, people. Show the algorithm some love. Seriously, it makes a huge difference. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this insane conclusion. What do you think happened to the characters afterwards? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us keep this journey going together.